series title, Ancient Pagan Herb and Elixir Lore, Magic, Healing and Power Through Earth's Gifts. Episode 1, Roots of the Green Path, the earliest herbal traditions in pagan culture. Before the word was written, before the prayer was spoken, the root was dug, the leaf was crushed, the brew was steeped. In silence, the earth taught her first spells. Introduction. In the quiet womb of prehistory, before temples, before books, before even the wheel, there were the herbs. Pagan folk, hunter-gatherers, forest dwellers, and tribal mystics learned not from priests, but from the whisper of leaves and the murmur of brooks. This is where our green journey begins. Sacred relationship with nature. Pagan cultures didn't see plants as resources, but as spirits. Herbs had personalities. They could teach, warn, protect, or punish. The hedge witch, or wise woman, wasn't just a healer. She was a translator between plant and human. Some early examples. Yarrow, Achillea millefolium, used by the Celts and Germanic tribes to stop bleeding in battle, symbolic of Mars. It was believed to contain warrior energy. Mugwort, Artemisia vulgaris, known as the dream herb, sacred to Artemis and Hecate, burned before trance work and used under pillows to encourage visions. Henbane, Hyoscyamus niger, a dark herb used cautiously for necromancy, flying ointments and possession rituals by witches in Germanic and Norse lore. Ancient herbal kitchens and earth cauldrons. Pagans didn't separate magic from daily life. Food was spell, cooking was ritual. A soup of wild roots was also a warding charm. A tea of blossoms could open the heart or close the throat. Examples of culinary magic: garlic and onion, wards against evil, illness and curses in Slavic and Mediterranean traditions, hung in doorways, added to protective meals. Honey and mead, offerings to gods and fae. Mead made from fermented honey was drunk during solstice rites to induce altered states and commune with deities. Salt and ash. Salted bread fed the ancestors, while ash from sacred fire was stirred into barley water for divination rituals. Elixirs, brews and sacred drinks. Potions weren't Harry Potter novelties. They were sacred drinks that could heal, bewitch, bind, or bless. Ayahuasca! Amazonian tribes, used by pagan shamans in rainforest temples. A brew of Banisteriopsis carpi and chacruna leaves used to contact spirits. Ancient Greece, a barley-based psychedelic potion used in the Eleusinian mysteries to initiate communion with Persephone and Demeter. Heather mead, Celtic druids, drunk during Imbolc Beltane for purification, fertility and to honour Brigid. Plants for harm, power and protection. Not all plant magic was gentle. The poison garden had its place. Every witch had her baneful allies. These were not for the faint of heart and were always approached with respect. Belladonna, used to anoint the witch's broomstick in flying ointments, also used for seduction charms and baneful workings. Mandrake root, carved into humanoid shapes, placed under the bed for fertility or used in curses. Its scream was said to kill. Thorn apple, datura, used in trance work, divination and necromancy. Sacred to the darker gods. Rituals and moon-timed gathering, herbs were picked under specific moons with spoken charms, bare feet and silver blades. Each plant had a planetary ruler, an elemental affinity and a spiritual resonance. Full moon, gather herbs for prophecy, healing, love. New moon, gather for banishment, binding and invisibility. Solar herbs, like St. John's wort rosemary, picked at midsummer for vitality and protection. Lunar herbs, like jasmine, willow bark, harvested at midnight with silent lips. Tools of the Green Witch. Mortar and pestle, not just kitchen tools, ritual instruments to activate the spirit of the herb. Herb bundles and sachets for love, sleep, travel or banishing. Smoke cleansing with herbs, mugwort, juniper, cedar, not just sage. Closing incantation. Blessed be the green beneath my feet, the root, the leaf, the breath I meet. With hand and heart I gather true. May the earth remember, and I too. Episode 2. Serpent and Saffron, the temple herbs of ancient Egypt. What is in your mouth can become a curse or a cure. What grows along the Nile is not just food, but the flesh of the gods. Introduction. In the golden lands of Kemet, what we now call Egypt, the sacred and the medicinal were never separate. Every herb was an offering, every potion a prayer. The Nile birthed not only crops but rituals, magic and medicine, all rooted in the green wisdom of the gods. The temples weren't just places of worship, they were laboratories, gardens, and schools of alchemical transformation. The priestesses of Isis and healers of Sekhmet wielded herbs like daggers or balm, depending on the will of the gods. Temple gardens, greenhouses of the divine rites. Every major temple had a sacred garden tended by priests and herbal scribes. Papyrus scrolls recorded not just the recipes but the ritual timing of each plant's harvest. Each garden had zones for healing, spiritual elevation, embalming, and cursing. Notable plants in temple use: frankincense and myrrh, burned daily for purification and contact with Ra, the sun god. Both were also infused in oils for embalming and protection spells. Lotus, blue Nymphaea cerulea, sacred to Nefertem and Isis, symbol of rebirth, made into narcotic teas for ecstatic ritual, often mixed with wine. Mandrake jarret, imported from Canaan, used in sex magic, fertility rites, and as an anesthetic, extremely potent and spiritually volatile. Potions of power, magic through the mouth. Egyptians consumed anointed or fumigated herbs depending on the intention. These concoctions were recorded in the Ebers Papyrus, c. 1550 BCE, which lists over 700 magical and medical herbal uses. Some powerful potions: scarab wine, a fermented drink infused with lotus and wild herbs, used in solar rituals to connect with Khepri, the dawn aspect of Ra. Saffron elixir. Saffron, honey, and wine were blended for love magic and to awaken the eye of Hathor. Ecstasy, beauty, seduction. Garlic honey poultice, used for protection against evil spirits and plague demons, rubbed on thresholds and skin during times of illness. The poison path. Sekhmet's healing and wrath. Sekhmet, Linus goddess of war and healing, taught that the same plant can save or slay. Priests of Sekhmet learned the use of venomous herbs. Hemlock, shamu, rare, used for executions, exorcisms, or trance state inductions in death cult rituals. Castor bean, oil of Ricinus, used for purging, physical and spiritual, also smeared on enemies in baneful rituals. Thorn apple, aimed by oracles to enter visions of the afterlife, also used to curse traitors. Sekhmet's rituals always included balance, an antidote for every poison, a blessing after every curse. The message: healing without power is weak. Power without healing is destruction. Moon herbs and the priestesses of Isis. The priestesses of Isis, lunar mother and goddess of resurrection, were skilled in lunar-timed herbal rites. Herbs for sleep, prophecy, fertility, and grief included chamomile, steeped in milk and honey for dream work and to contact ancestors. Jasmine, used in perfume oils during moon rituals and funerals. Anise and fennel, burned to awaken inner sight and call protective spirits. The rite of the sacred mirror used blue lotus tea and anise oil while invoking Isis by moonlight, asking for visions or messages from the dead. Funeral rites and preservation magic. The art of embalming used over 40 plants, each chosen for spiritual and physical properties. Examples: cedarwood oil, purified and preserved the flesh, thought to repel dark spirits. Cinnamon and cassia, considered gifts from the gods, used to scent the dead and invoke solar blessing. Onion and garlic, placed within bandages to ward off evil and guide the soul in Duat, the underworld. The opening of the mouth ceremony was the final act. The anointed tools were passed over the mummy's mouth with incantations and herbal smoke, restoring their voice in the afterlife. Everyday people! Everyday magic. While temples held the deepest secrets, ordinary Egyptians practiced herbal folk magic too. Mothers bathed babies in herb-infused waters for protection from the evil eye. Farmers left bouquets of mint and thyme for Bez, the dwarf god of fertility and luck. Girls wore garlands of clover and lotus at festivals to attract love and favour. Even bread could be magical, made with blessed grain, shaped into charms and baked on holy days.
Closing incantation.
O roots that sleep beneath the sand, awake now in my sacred hand. By Nile's flow and Isis' flame, let every leaf speak true my name. The forest knows, Slavic pagan herbal and the witch Baba Yaga. Ask the root, not the scholar. Go to the hut, not the palace. The old women stirring pots in the woods, they knew what the kings forgot. Introduction. Long before Christianity reached Eastern Europe, Slavic tribes worshipped a vibrant pantheon of nature deities. Their rituals were rooted, literally, in the earth, and their knowledge of herbs was passed from crone to maiden, shaman to child, hidden beneath leaves and fire smoke. At the heart of it all was the forest, and the ancient forest witch, healer, curse weaver, death walker, midwife. The archetype of these witches culminates in Baba Yaga, a fearsome crone who lived between the worlds. Her hut stood on chicken legs, and her mortar and pestle crushed more than herbs. The forest as pharmacy and portal. The Slavic forest was sacred, a breathing entity filled with spirits, Leshy, Rusalka, Domovoi, who could bless or blight. Herbs weren't just for the body, they were offerings, bribes, contracts with the unseen. Key forest herbs and their magical uses. St. John's wort, burned to ward off evil spirits and nightmares, hung over beds and worn in midsummer garlands to protect the soul. Nettle, a plant of both curse and cure, used in flogging rites to drive out illness or guilt, carried in shoes for strength and vitality. Wormwood, pollen, burned at graves and crossroads for necromancy, also used to banish ghosts, curses, and even unwanted suitors. Gathering was sacred. Herbs were picked. At dawn for healing, at midnight for divination or cursing, on cupola night, summer solstice for love, protection, fertility, when the fern was said to bloom and grant second sight. Baba Yaga's cabinet of cures and curses. Baba Yaga, neither fully good nor evil, was the guardian of the liminal. She brewed, baked, boiled, and burned. If you pleased her, you received healing or prophecy. Displease her, and you became soup. Legendary herbs in her lore. Mandrake root, said to scream when pulled. Baba Yaga used it in potions for shape-shifting communication with the dead. Fly agaric mushroom, Amanita muscaria, the red-capped mushroom of fairy tales, used by Slavic seers and witches to induce trances, spirit flight, and otherworldly visions.
Rowan, ash,
The witch's wand and boundary marker. Baba Yaga's hut was said to be circled in rowan branches to keep unwanted souls out and chosen souls in. Her cauldron was a portal, her pestle a thunderbolt, and her broom swept away tracks, not dirt, so she could remain unseen.
pagan potions,
Brews and kitchen witchcraft. Slavic women brewed with purpose. A potion wasn't just made, it was sung into being. Words, breath, herb and water united under candlelight and intention. Popular brews and their purposes. Kvass herbal tonic, a fermented bread drink infused with herbs like mint, dill and wild raspberry leaves, used to cleanse the stomach and ward off spiritual stagnation. Honey mead, medovica, offered to the gods and the dead during rituals, poured on graves, or drunk during weddings and harvest rites. Chaga mushroom infusion, brewed for longevity and spiritual resilience, shared among elders and shamans. Kitchen rituals included baking ritual bread with thyme, onion or dill for protection, smearing thresholds with garlic and lard during disease outbreaks, hanging dried mugwort over cradles to protect newborns from wandering spirits.
death,
Healing and the herbal midwives. In Slavic culture, death was not feared but respected and prepared for. The same woman who helped birth you might also lay herbs on your corpse. These herbal midwives used plants to ease both entry into and exit from the world. Funeral herbs, juniper and pine, burned at funerals to purify the soul's passage. Marigold and yarrow, laid in the coffin to guide the dead through Nav, the Slavic underworld. Given to the grieving to calm the spirit and open dream channels for visitation. Hash, lunar rites and women's work. Women gathered under moonlight for healing circles and love spells. Every plant had a goddess, a moon phase, a season. Cupola night was when young women floated flower wreaths on rivers, each woven with prophetic herbs. Mokosh, the earth mother, was honoured with flax garlands and poppy seeds. Marzana, goddess of winter and death, received offerings of dried herbs before her effigy was drowned to welcome spring. Moon herbs, motherworts, calmed the womb and heart, used in women's rituals. Poppy seed, scattered in love spells and also fed to spirits to keep them occupied. Lovage, a powerful aphrodisiac herb used in bath spells to attract lovers. Closing incantation, forest deep, with root and bone, where moss and shadow make their home, whisper through leaf, speak through stone, old witch, bless me as your own. Episode 4, Smoke of the Seeress, Norse herb magic and the path of the vulva. She came cloaked in fur and silence, bearing staff and smoke. She did not heal the body. She unveiled the threads of fate. Introduction. In the Old Norse world, magic was not gentle. It was a storm, a spirit ride, a force of will and song and blood. The vulva, wandwoman, prophetess, deathwalker, was feared and revered alike. She carried not only staves and songs, but bundles of dried herbs, oils and fumes that pierced the veil between worlds. To the Norse, herbs were sacred gifts from Freya, goddess of Seda, sorcery, and Odin himself, who hung from Yggdrasil to learn the runes. They were tools of ecstasy, sacrifice, protection, and sometimes obliteration. The rituals of Seda and the use of herbs. Seda was the most powerful magical tradition of the Norse world. A vulva performed it seated upon a high platform, surrounded by song and smoke. To enter trance, she used herbs burned as incense, hallucinogenic, calming, or vision-inducing. Ointments rubbed on her body to loosen the soul. Herbal brews consumed slowly to push the mind into altered states. Important trance herbs. Henbane, Hyoscyamus niger, the most important Norse vision herb, caused hallucinations, prophetic dreams, and soul flight. Angelica, Angelica archangelica, sacred to the northern tribes, burned in rituals of purification and divine contact. Birch trees were sacred to Frigg and Freya. The tar was burned in sade to sanctify the space and awaken ancestral spirits. The staff, the smoke and the sacrifice. A vulva's wand or staff was not merely symbolic. It was often carved with rune herbs, bound with strands of mugwort or yarrow and considered alive. The seeress's tools. Staff wrapped in dried mugwort. Mugwort was burned or chewed to call visions. Amulets of wormwood and spruce tips, hung around the neck or tied to the belt for protection during astral travel. Runes scented with herb oils, often made from pine resin and garlic to invoke Odin and keep out trickster spirits. Some rituals included blood and herb sacrifice, a mixture called blottul. Goat or boar blood was poured over herbs like juniper, rowan, and thyme, then burned at sacred stones to attract the gods. Favour or open fate visions. Healing and harm. The duality of northern herb magic. In the cold climates of Scandinavia, survival depended on cunning and knowledge. The same woman who could pull a fever from your child could also curse your crops. Healing herbs, meadowsweet, Filipendula ulmaria, used for fevers, stomach pain, and as a sacred offering to Ea, goddess of healing. Juniper, Juniperus communis, burned to purify rooms and protect newborns, also steeped in baths for the sick. Chaga mushroom on birch trees, brewed as a sacred tea for strength and endurance. Baneful herbs, fly agaric, Amanita muscaria, not always hallucinogenic when boiled, but sometimes used in death rites or curse ceremonies. Wolfsbane, aconitum, called Odin's helmet, poisonous, sometimes used in spells of revenge or justice. Lunar and seasonal herb magic. Though Norse cosmology focused on the 9 worlds, the lunar and seasonal rhythms were still honoured in herbalism. Each Sabbat or seasonal feast marked a time for specific herb rites. Yule, midwinter. Pine, fir and dried orange peel burned with clove to awaken the sun and protect the household. Ostara, spring equinox. Dandelion wine, nettle soup and herbal baths made with violet, marjoram and birch for cleansing and renewal. Midsummer, herbs gathered before dawn were believed to be awakened. Wormwood, mugwort and wild thyme were used in love and courage spells. The elves, ancestors and the herb-ridden dead. To the Norse, herbs were also keys to invisible realms. Offerings of herbs were made to landvan spirits with bundles of juniper, thyme or caraway. Draugr, the dead who do not rest, with valerian root and elderberry. Elves and Disa, female ancestors with soft floral herbs like marigold, chamomile and linden. A vulva might lay herbs over a grave to bind the spirit or burn wormwood at the burial mound to draw the dead into speech. Norse herbal rune spellcraft runes weren't just carved, they were grown. Many rune workers used herbs in tandem with runes. Answers associated with Odin, communication, etched into elder bark or mugwort leaves. The rune of water and emotion, worn with herbs like seaweed or moss for emotional healing. Used with nettle or thorned herbs for aggressive warding or counterspells. Herbs were used in talisman pouches, often worn beneath the tunic or sewn into cloaks. One for strength, one for love, one for clarity in war. Closing incantation. By root and rune, by fire and frost, I call the path the seeress crossed. With smoke I rise, with staff I turn, let the leaf speak what I yearn. Episode 5, Aphrodite's Garden, Love, Lust and Herbal Enchantment in Ancient Greece. She stirs the honey with thyme and rose. Her touch is warm, her breath bestows. The power to bind, the power to break, all through herbs the heart will take. Introduction. In the sun-drenched world of ancient Greece, love wasn't just emotion, it was power. And no one understood that better than the priestesses of Aphrodite, goddess of love, lust and beauty. From her temples in Cyprus to secret grottos near the sea, they cultivated herbs for passion, persuasion, seduction, and spellbinding. Greek herbal magic was elegant but potent, infused into perfumes, teas, baths, oils, and even wine-laced philtres that promised irresistible desire or ruin. The sacred garden of Aphrodite. Aphrodite's plants were fragrant, soft, and lush, each one tied to body, soul, and sensuality. Her priestesses were alchemists of longing, skilled in both botanical beauty and erotic enchantment. Key herbs of Aphrodite. Rose, Rosa Gallica, the queen of love, used in baths, oils, wines, and garlands. Rose petals stirred into honey and eaten to sweeten one's aura. Sensual and sacred, burned during erotic rituals or applied to pulse points as a potent perfume. Mint, arousing and awakening, worn under the breasts, rubbed on the thighs, or steeped in wine for flirtation spells. Marjoram, Origanum majorana, used in spells to attract a soulmate, worn in amulets or placed beneath pillows with lavender and rose petals. Love philtres and erotic potions. In ancient Greek magic, a philtre, love potion, wasn't just superstition. It was a crafted blend of herbs, intention, wine, and incantation. Some were gentle, others dangerously binding. Famous love brews included wine with damiana and cinnamon, stirred clockwise while whispering the name of the desired, drunk together to ignite passion. Honey mixed with crushed poppy seeds, given in secret, believed to weaken the will and open the heart. Apple slices soaked in rosewater and mint, shared between lovers to ensure loyalty and obsession. In temples, priestesses anointed their inner thighs and necks with oils of jasmine, neroli, and bergamot, drawing not just men but divine energy.
Herbal glamour.
Beauty and charm spells. Greek herbal lore wasn't only about seduction, it was about commanding attention, glowing from within, radiating divine beauty. Ritual beauty practices. Olive oil infused with chamomile and calendula, used daily by women of status to glow in sun and moonlight. Milk and honey baths with rose petals and mint, a cleansing rite for full moons or before meeting a lover. Eyeliner made with charcoal, honey, and crushed basil, used to enchant and disarm with a single gaze. Glamour sachets were carried by temple initiates. Red silk pouch with clove, rosemary, rose, and a mirror shard, to reflect back the desire cast by another. Curses of love, the binding and the banishing. Not all love was mutual. Ancient Greek witches knew that lust, betrayal, and jealousy demanded sharp tools. These were the herbs of heartbreak, used in darker rites under waning moons. Baneful herbs and their uses. Hellebore, Helleborus niger, used in love curses or to induce madness in a rival, said to make the beloved see only you and go mad in your absence. Black poppy, burned in curses to end affairs or to cloud memory and affection. Asphodel, associated with the underworld, used in necromantic love spells to call a dead lover or to make one's love mourn endlessly. Binding spells often used hair soaked in mugwort and wine, then wrapped around a laurel branch and buried under a lover's threshold. Temple rituals and perfumed offerings. At Aphrodite's temples, priestesses prepared ritual meals of figs, pomegranates, honeyed herbs, and white wine laced with rosemary or saffron. They danced with myrtle crowns, burned storax resin and frankincense, and whispered invocations as they anointed their bodies with oils blessed at sunrise. Offerings left for Aphrodite. Apples pierced with rose thorns. Almond cakes wrapped in thyme and tied with red string. a bowl of milk infused with lavender and verbena, placed at sea cliffs or fountains. Aphrodisiacal dreamwork and night rites. Herbs weren't only for waking pleasure. Dreams were another space to draw a lover or receive visions. Herbs of erotic dreamwork. Blue lotus, imported from Egypt. Drunken wine for prophetic and sensual dreams. Verbena and lavender, placed beneath pillows in satchels tied with red silk. Dittany of Crete, burned before sleep to summon the image of one's soulmate. Temple initiates fasted and drank rose tea under the full moon, then slept on beds of bay leaves, thyme and poppy petals, awaiting Aphrodite's blessing in dreams. Closing incantation with mint on tongue and rose on skin. By firelight let love begin. By herb, by bloom, by sea and dove, I call the flame, the ache, the love. Episode 6. Oak, Mistletoe and Moonlight, the plant lore of the ancient Celtic druids. Cut with gold beneath the moon, the green speaks not too late or soon. It waits in grove and stone and stream, where druids walk and spirits dream.
Introduction.
The Celtic world, stretching across ancient Ireland, Britain, Gaul and beyond, was alive with sacred rhythm. Plants were not mere remedies, they were living allies, each imbued with myth, memory and magic. The druids, guardians of natural law and cosmic time, used herbs for divination, healing, sacrifice, transformation, and above all, connection to land, to ancestors, to the invisible. To the Celtic mind, everything that grew had spirit, trees, flowers, mosses, each a thread in the vast living web of the otherworld. Sacred trees, the backbone of Celtic herb lore. No other culture placed such reverence upon trees. The Ogam, Celtic tree alphabet, was used by druids for divination and spellwork. Each tree had its own personality, powers, and planetary alignments. Key sacred trees. Oak, the king of trees, symbol of strength, endurance, and truth. Druids held council beneath oaks and gathered mistletoe from their boughs. Tree of protection, intuition, and astral travel. Red berries used in amulets, wood carved into protective runes. Hawthorn, guardian of the Fey realm, often planted near fairy mounds, blossoms used in fertility rites and spring marriages. Yew, tree of death and rebirth, found in graveyards. Berries and leaves used in ancestor rites and to see through the veil. Each grove, nematon, was a temple. Trees were chosen with care for rites, sacrifice, or gathering.
Mistletoe.
The druid's crown. No herb was more sacred than mistletoe, especially when found on oak. This rare parasitic plant was gathered with elaborate ceremony, often during the 6th day of the moon, with golden sickles and never touching the ground. Uses of mistletoe? Brewed in sacred elixirs to heal infertility, epilepsy, or internal bleeding. Hung in doorways to repel poison, lightning, and ill spirits. Burned in rituals for prophecy, especially during Samhain and Beltane. Pliny wrote, "They believed mistletoe to give fertility to barren animals and to be an antidote to all poisons." The white berries were seen as the semen of the gods, the golden bow linking the mortal to the divine.
Half.
Healing and herbal wisdom of the Philid poet healers. Alongside the druids were the Philid poet seers who memorized hundreds of plant uses, charms, and poetic healing verses. Their herbalism blended prayer, sound, and plant. Important healing herbs: meadowsweet, Filipendula ulmaria, sacred to the goddess Ain, used for fevers, pain, and heart healing, sprinkled around sacred wells. Nettle nantog, used in blood purification and warding, given to warriors before battle to awaken the fire of Mars.
Oh, boundary
Plant. Elderflower tea was drunk for flu and grief. The wood was never burned, said to summon the dark fae. Healing was storytelling. Charms were whispered over wounds. Herbs were sung to as they were steeped, and the body was treated as part of the soul's forest. Druidic divination with herbs. Herbs were used to induce second sight, walk the dream paths, and consult the Siddhit spirits. The druid's trance was as much about breath and smoke as it was about plant. Divinatory methods. Burning yarrow or mugwort while casting ogam sticks. Chewing vervain leaves before sleep for visionary dreams. Dandelion root smoke, inhaled during equinox rituals for messages from the dead. Wild sage and fern wrapped around a seer's forehead during moon prophecy. Herbs of the Fae and the otherworld. Celtic herbalists knew that the veil between worlds was thin. Herbs could open, close, or curse those doorways. Plants of fairy magic, foxglove, called fairy thimbles, toxic, used in bindings and dangerous glamours. Primrose and violet, laid at windowsills to keep fairies out or invite them in depending on intention. Mugwort, burned in wild rituals to protect travellers, guide spirit flight, or bind the soul to the land.
St. John's wort.
Harvested at midsummer, hung on doors to prevent abduction by the good folk. Witches and druidesses sometimes marked paths through the forest, using bundles of herbs tied in specific knots to signal spirit trails or trap curses. Lunar, seasonal and festival herbalism. Each of the Celtic fire festivals had its own herbal lore. Imbolc, time of purification. Herbs like angelica, snowdrop and birch used in candle magic to honour Brigid. Beltane, 1 May, love and fire rites. Hawthorn blossom, apple and rose petals thrown into bonfires for fertility. Lugnasod, first harvest. Meadows wheat, barley and cornflour woven into garlands for gratitude rituals. Samhain, 31 Oct, the veil thins. Mugwort, yew and wormwood burned at graves. Parsley eaten for necromantic dreams. The full moon was for healing and blessing, while the dark moon brought rituals of banishment, justice or dream work. Closing incantation. O sacred leaf, O silver bough, whisper me the ancient vow. By root and rune and wind-blown tree, let Danu's green flow into me. The herbal power of African ancestors. The leaf speaks, but the root remembers. The smoke dances, but the drum opens the door. Introduction. In the many rich spiritual traditions of Africa, from the Ifa system of the Yoruba to the Zulu Sangomas to the herbal priesthoods of the Congo and Ethiopia, plants are not just medicine. They are voices, spirits, ancestors themselves. Every illness has both a physical and a spiritual cause, and every herb has both a function and a soul. The diviner, the herbalist, and the medium all work together. Nothing is done without the permission of the land, the guidance of dreams, and the blessing of the ancestors. The plant spirits. Ancestors in leaf and bark. African herbalism is rooted in a cosmology where plants are people. They are sung to, given offerings, and even initiated. Key sacred plants and their roles: rooibos, Aspalathus linearis, used by the Khoisan for purification, fertility, and calming rituals, often brewed during full moon healing ceremonies. Moringa, Moringa oleifera, known as the tree of life, leaves eaten for vitality, roots used in protection charms. African basil, Ocimum gratissimum, burned to cleanse the house and call positive spirits, used in offerings to Orisha like Obatala and Orunmila. Canna, Silicium tortuosum, used in South Africa for emotional healing, connection with ancestors, and dream work. Each plant had a guardian spirit. Herbalists often went into trance or dream states to ask permission before harvesting. No leaf is taken without a prayer. No root is pulled without offering a coin, milk, or song.
Smoke, fire, and spirit.
Herbal rituals of contact. In many African traditions, smoke carries the voice. Burning herbs opens gates, calls spirits, or drives them out. Ritual uses of herbal smoke, sage and sweetgrass, native to northern and East Africa, smudging for blessing and purification. Frankincense and myrrh, burned in Ethiopian Orthodox and ancestral rites, used to call divine presence and bless sacred gatherings. Ethiopian rue, Tena Adam, crushed and burned to banish illness or curses, also steeped in water and sprinkled around the home. Healers often burn herbs on hot coals while chanting the names of the ancestors or spirits being invoked. The Sangoma and her spirit bag. In southern Africa, the Sangoma is the traditional healer, diviner and medium. She communicates with the Amadlozi ancestral spirits through trance, drums, dreams and herbs. Sangoma healing tools. A sacred pouch filled with bones, roots, shells, dried herbs, used in divination. Imfifo, Helichrysum odoratissimum, sacred smudging herb, burned to invoke ancestors, cleanse spaces, or guide the soul of the deceased. African dream bean, Enteraridi, used by diviners to induce lucid dreams and astral travel. Sangomas may wear crowns of leaves, bathe in herb-infused water, or chew specific roots to heighten clairvoyance. Herbal healing and body power. African medicine sees the body as a vessel for spirit, and herbs are used to realign energy, cleanse the blood, release trauma, or attract power. Healing brews and potions. Baobab fruit tea, given to women after childbirth to strengthen the body and protect from wandering spirits. Devil's claw root, used for pain, arthritis, and protection from hexes. Ginger and clove infusion, drunk before rituals of power to awaken the blood and voice. Body preparations, red ochre mixed with herbs, applied to the skin before ritual or battle. Palm oil and shea butter, infused with herbs and rubbed into joints or hair for blessing and ancestral favour. Dream, death, and ancestral contact. African herbal mysticism sees dreams as messages and death as passage, never an ending. Dreamwork herbs? Blue lotus imported through Nile trade, steeped for dream induction and visions. African dream root, Silene capensis, used by Xhosa diviners, brings vivid prophetic dreams and connection with spirits. Calabash and hibiscus, hung above beds or boiled for bath rituals to loosen the veil. Death rites with herbs, myrrh and lavender burned for purification. Basil and thyme planted on graves. Banishing bundles of rue, garlic, and wild mint left on doorsteps to close the gates after a soul passes. Herbal protection, hexes and reversals. African magical practice recognizes the power of malice, jealousy, envy, curses, and has strong herbal tools for reversal, warding, and spiritual armor. Protective bundles, garlic, rue, and black pepper tied with red cloth and hung above doors. Charms of dried lemon, bone, and sea salt placed under the bed. Reversal rituals, a bath of lime leaves, eucalyptus, and ashes under moonlight. Burning palm fronds soaked in vinegar and herbal oils while speaking the curse's reversal aloud. Powerful magicians may carry porcupine quills, thorned herbs, or serpent bones for counterattack or justice magic. Closing incantation, O root that sleeps where ancestor lies. O drum that speaks and fire that flies, by leaf and ash and word unspoken, let what is broken be unbroken. Episode 8, Soma and the Seven Winds, the divine herbalism of ancient India. From root to star the sap ascends, in leaf, the secret of breath, in flower, the eye of the gods. Introduction. In the sacred lands of the Indus and Sarasvati rivers, the earliest spiritual healers practiced herbal alchemy not just to heal, but to awaken divine consciousness. They spoke of Soma, the immortal nectar, of the three doshas, body energies, and of plants born from cosmic fire, moonlight, and memory. Every plant had a mantra, a planet, a god, and a breath. This was not medicine. It was spiritual engineering, refined over millennia through both science and prayer. Soma, the plant of immortality. Soma is one of the great mysteries of the Vedic world. It was both a god and a drink, a golden elixir said to bring immortality, vision, strength, and ecstasy. Soma rituals were held by firelight. The plant was pressed between stones, mixed with water, milk, and sometimes honey. The juice was filtered through wool and consumed by priests chanting hymns from the Rig Veda. It lifted the soul, expanded the mind, and opened the third eye. Though the exact botanical identity of Soma is lost, scholars and seers have speculated it may have been Amanita muscaria, sacred mushroom, ephedra, stimulating desert plant, Sarcostema acidum, leafless vine used in Vedic offerings. Regardless of the plant, Soma was divine fire in fluid form, a ladder between mortals and the heavens. Ayurvedic herbalism, the breath of the plants, the ancient medical science of Ayurveda, lit knowledge of life, classified herbs by taste, energy, elemental nature, and how they balance the doshas. Vata, air plus ether, creative, restless, dry. Pitta, fire plus water, intense, sharp, passionate. Kapha, water, earth, grounded, slow, stable. Each plant affected one or more of these energies, aiming for balance, harmony, longevity, and spiritual clarity. Important Ayurvedic herbs: Tulsi, holy basil, sacred to Vishnu and Lakshmi, clears the aura, boosts immunity, awakens devotion, often grown in the center of homes. Ashwagandha, root of strength and grounding, used by warriors and sages to calm nerves and restore life force. Brahmi, the herb of wisdom, opens the crown chakra, enhances memory, clarity, and dream vision. Neem, called the village pharmacy, used for purification, protection, and ritual bathing. Herbal alchemy and ritual use. Indian seers and sadhus knew that plants respond to sound and sacred intention. Herbal preparation was often accompanied by chanting, fasting, or offerings. Ritual uses of herbs: sandalwood paste, applied to the third eye before meditation or worship, calms the fire element. Camphor and frankincense, burned before deity statues and on altars to purify the space and carry prayers. Turmeric and saffron, used in blessing rituals, weddings, and to anoint holy persons or tools. Every herb had a deity correspondence, e.g. Tulsi for Krishna, lotus for Saraswati. A mantra sound form for activation, a time of collection, often dawn or under specific lunar phases. Temple flowers and dream plants. Flowers held divine frequencies and were key in worship, enchantment, and spirit contact. Sacred flowers and their uses. Lotus opens the chakras, used in meditation and dream vision. Jasmine draws love and divine feminine presence, used in moon rituals and offered to the goddess. Champaka, flower of enlightenment, burned in incense or woven into garlands worn during trance work. Dream-enhancing herbs. Indian valerian, drunk in tea or burned at night to induce prophetic dreams. Brahmi and ghee, taken together before bed to open the dream gates and bring clarity from the inner guru. Chakra herbalism and energetic potency herbs were often used to awaken and balance the chakras, the body's spinning energy centers. Examples of chakra-aligned root: ashwagandha, clove, nettle. Svadhisthana, cardamom, saffron, shatavari. Manipura, solar plexus, ginger, cinnamon, turmeric. Anahata, heart, rose, tulsi, jasmine. Vishuddha, peppermint, licorice, blue lotus. Brahmi, mugwort, camphor. Sahasrara, lotus, sandalwood, myrrh. These were often infused into teas, oils, incense, or baths, depending on the desired spiritual effect. Banishing, protection, and spirit communication. While Ayurveda emphasized harmony, ancient folk and tantric traditions also used herbs for banishing illness, breaking curses, and contacting spirits or ancestors. Protection herbs: mustard seed, scattered across thresholds to repel negative spirits. Asafoetida, hing, strong-smelling resin used in exorcism rituals. Rudraksha beads, from a sacred tree worn to shield the aura and connect to Shiva. Spirit herbs: clove and bay leaf, burned for ancestral invocation, offered to spirits or deities in communication rituals. Incense blend used to welcome celestial beings. Closing incantation: Soma fire, root of sky, by mantras, breath, and seer's eye, awaken herbs with sacred flame and call me home by ancient name. The ritual herbs of the Roman pagans: by torchlight, laurel, and sacred vine, they wove their oaths in scented wine. In temples' grand or hidden glade, the green gods listened as incense played. Temples of fragrance and flame, the Roman green path. In Rome, the sacred and the civic were intertwined. Temples stood not only for the gods, but as centres of public life, yet beneath the cold marble and stone, a living world of roots, resins, and ritual herbs pulsed softly. The Romans, inheritors of Etruscan wisdom and Greek philosophy, cultivated a deep reverence for the powers of nature. Herbs were not simply medicine, they were keys to the divine. Each offering of laurel or myrrh was a whisper to the gods. Each libation poured was a pact sealed. Rituals often began with fumigations, sacred smoke lifted on censers of bronze. Frankincense, thus, burned for Jupiter to invoke clarity, power, and divine order. Myrrh, sacred to Vesta and the underworld, brought stillness and depth. Bay laurel, Laurus nobilis associated with Apollo, was offered to kindle prophecy and glory. The Vestal virgins tended the eternal flame with sprigs of sacred herbs and salt, guarding Rome's spiritual heart with rosemary, juniper, and verbena. 2. Sacred plants of power, prophecy, and purification. Rome's herbal pantheon was as vast as its empire, but a few herbs held special sanctity in both household and temple rites.
And bay laurel.
Victory, prophecy, protection. Crowned upon poets, generals, and oracles, laurel was believed to ward off evil and inspire divine speech. Branches were hung over doorways or burned to dispel envy and misfortune. Incantation: while burning laurel, bay of sun and sacred tongue, let only truth from me be wrung. In victory or solemn speech, bring what's true within my reach.
Verbena, vervain.
Purity, binding, favour of the gods. The herba sacra of Roman priests. Vervain was gathered at dawn with a silver sickle and used in both love charms and rites of purification. It was laid on altars, steeped in wine, or burned with prayers to Venus. Rosemary, remembrance, cleansing, ancestor rites. Used at funerals and weddings alike, rosemary bridged the gap between life and death. Wreaths were worn during rituals for memory and clarity. Its smoke purified the home. Myrtle, love, youth, Venusian grace. Sacred to Venus, myrtle was used in bridal rites and love spells. Berries and leaves were steeped into oils or burned on coals to attract sensual joy. Ivy and grapevine ecstasy release Dionysian rite. In Bacchic ceremonies, ivy crowned the heads of celebrants and grapevines adorned the altars. They symbolized divine madness, liberation, and communion through wine and rhythm. 3. Domestic magic, hearth herbs and household devotions. Every Roman home housed a lararium, a sacred niche for household gods, the lares and penates. Here, daily offerings were made of salt and flour, blended with dried herbs like bay, mint, and savoury. Garlands of rue and rosemary hung for protection. Oil and wine, often poured onto fire with whispered thanks. Women, especially mothers and matriarchs, were the keepers of these domestic rites, blending culinary herbcraft with deep spiritual care. Of harm and healing, the shadows of the apotheker. Rome was no stranger to darker uses of herbcraft, from political assassinations to curses etched in lead and buried with herbs. Plants like henbane, hemlock and poppy were weapons in the hands of the cunning. Henbane Hyoscyamus niger brought visions or death, used in necromancy and baneful spells. Poppy, Papaver somniferum, though healing, was also a gateway to Leith's embrace, used for sleep, silence or escape. Garlic and rue in contrast protected against the evil eye and were worn or carried as amulets. Closing incantation, laurel's flame. I light the bay and raise the smoke, by vine and root, by spell unspoke. May Jupiter's fire and Venus' kiss bring might and grace to all I wish. With laurel crowned and soul made clean, I walk unseen, but sharp and keen. Episode 10. The Green Bones of the Alps. Alpine witchcraft and folk herb lore. Where snow-fed roots and wolfsbane creep, the mountain witches do not sleep. In frost and bloom they cast and cure, with mugwort charm and elder shore. Hidden valleys, whispering hills high in the Alps, where the cold thins the veil and winter lingers in shadowed pine, a different kind of herbcraft was born. These were not the temples of Rome or the oracles of Greece. These were stone huts, forest altars, and root cellars filled with secrets. The Alpine wise women, sometimes called Hexen, Kräuterfrauen, or simply those who know, held fierce herbal knowledge, blending pre-Christian paganism, Celtic remnants, and local superstition. Their work was deeply animistic and bound to place. Their craft lived in the charm bundles tied above barn doors, the root dolls buried in thresholds, the ashes of herbs mixed with salt and spoken the wild herbs of the witch path. These were not hothouse plants or priestly offerings. They were wild, stubborn, and often dangerous, growing from stone and snow or in cow pastures watched by ghosts. Mugwort, Artemisia vulgaris, protection, dreams, spirit walking. The witch's herb par excellence, burned before sleep, worn on the belt during solstice rites, or stuffed in pillows for prophetic dreams, used to anoint the feet before trance walks across mountain ridges where spirits gathered. With Artemisia at my side, no charm shall break, no ill betide. By root and smoke, by moonlit stone, I walk the dream and not alone. Eldercus! Thresholds, death, blessings. It was said the elder mother dwelled in the tree itself. Cutting it without permission brought ruin. But when honoured, she gave her blessings. Protection, healing, and safe crossing between worlds. Flowers made tonic, the bark and berries used carefully, always with reverence.
Spain.
Fear, curse, protection from spirits. Deadly, yes, but in the hands of a wise one, a barrier against evil. Hung near doors, it warded off restless souls. Witches may have used diluted forms to induce visions or mark sacred territory. Valerian root, trance, rest, necromancy, a pungent, grounding herb used to calm storms of the body and to prepare the mind for contact with the dead. boiled in goat's milk and poured upon stone for ancestor rites. Juniper and pine, smoke, sanctity, winter blessing. Burned in hearths and stables, these conifers were woven into smoke bundles during winter solstice. Their scent guarded homes from famine, frost, and spirits of sickness. 3. Rites of the Hexen, folk magic and flame herbcraft. Here was practical magic, meant to heal livestock, protect children, or break a fever. But it was also deeply mystical, especially during the nights between years, Deck 21 Jan 6, when the veil was thinnest. Rituals included burning 9 herbs at the solstice. Mugwort, thyme, sage, vervain, and others depending on local law. Milk poured on stone, mixed with wormwood or sweetwood rough to honour the forest spirits. Charms carved in bark and bound with thread soaked in valerian root. In darker times, these women were hunted, but the craft remained, hidden in song, recipe, and story. Ivory, alpine incantations and practices.
Herbal fire blessing for winter.
Burn juniper, mugwort, and rosemary in a small dish before a door or window. Smoke of pine and bitter leaf. Guard this home from cold and grief. Where shadows pass and snow shall fall, no harm may cross this mountain wall. Lay elderflower on stone. Speak while circling 3 times. Wander not, forgotten kin. By roots and star I draw you in, to where the hearth and memory keep. Lay down thy name and turn to sleep. Mugwort's path. By mugwort, leaf, and mountain ash, let no ill thought nor spirit clash. I light this flame for kin and kin, to hold the dark and keep me in, with herbs in hand and feet on stone. The path is clear, I walk alone.